All right, this is Jimmy Jive, and you're listening to Motor City Rock Talk. Today, my guest is the legendary Paul EinHaus, originally with Happy Accidents back in, I believe, the 80s, late 80s, into Static Alphabet, and many, many other things. We've kind of lost contact over the years. Anyway, Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. It's great to be seen.
Well, you're not being seen. This is
right.
radio.
Oh, I'm being seen by you.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. I haven't been better. I'm being serious, by the way. I feel great.
That's great. Because I think you look wonderful too.
Oh, good. Thanks.
And I've seen some of your pictures, and I wasn't sure.
It was getting sketchy there for a while, wasn't it?
What have you been up to since we last talked? And I know that's been what? Has it been 20
Yeah. Well,
years?
first of all, let me correct something you said there in the intro, or maybe I heard it wrong. It was Static Alphabet first, and then Happy Accidents.
You're right. No, I did think it was the other way around.
Yeah. And then after Happy Accidents, I was the lead singer and guitar player for this band called the Winonas. So that would have been like 2000 to 2005.
The Winonas?
Winonas, yes.
Were you doing Judd covers?
No. You're talking about Winona Judd,
Yeah.
I'm sure, right? No, that was a roots, we were a roots rock, kind of weirdo, eclectic thing. That was a lot of fun.
There was nothing weird about you, Paul. It was all pure. Pure fun under the sun.
Yeah, there's nothing.
I don't remember that. I thought, and maybe you had just discussed it as a band name. 'Cause I remember you were coming up or thinking of band names. Maybe it was just for fun. I remember one time you thought a cool band name was Reuben Kincaid.
Oh, really? Right, Reuben Kincaid. Well, because he's kind of an inspirational character for me.
I know. So
From
you never started a band called Reuben Kincaid?
Sadly, I got to say no. That has not ever happened.
The other one was the Wayback Machine. Remember that?
Did I come up with that?
Well, I sure as hell didn't.
Huh, that's pretty good.
I could have sworn that you had mentioned that these were names that you may use someday in bands.
Oh, really?
And we lost touch, so I thought, maybe that's where you went.
I should have written that shit down. Am I allowed to swear? Can I say that?
You just did.
Oh, okay.
Yes, YouTube. So what else?
So then after the Winonas, actually in coinciding with some of this, I was in other bands at the same time.
Yeah.
After that, I was just playing lead guitar in bands, not lead singing, songwriting, or anything like that. But I was then also recording. That's when I first started recording these solo records that hopefully we'll start talking about. And then a couple of years ago, let's say just a little before the pandemic, I started this band that we're calling the Paul House Arrest.
And when did you come up with that?
One of the other people in the band came up with that name.
Paul EinHaus wasn't cool enough? I mean,
I don't know if I'm still comfortable with having my name as the featured thing, but one of the other guys is a Joker Brandon, the bass player in the band, and he said, you should call it the Paul House Arrest because there's a play on words, like house arrest. You're looking at me quizzically. Yeah.
EinHaus Arrest.
Yeah, see? Yeah, you got to say it fast.
Yes, no, I get it now.
Right.
Okay, I'm not that clever. It's not.
Look, believe me, there's very little clever about that. But yeah, when you explain it, then people get it. But even if you don't get it, to me, it's still fine. It's still good.
No, it is. I get it now, and it's what I would expect. I would expect something like that, especially since you didn't name it Reuben Kincaid.
Reuben Kincaid, or what was the other one? The Wayback Machine?
Wayback Machine.
Yeah. So that started probably a little bit before the pandemic, and then we were shut down then. And then we just kind of started getting back off the ground after the pandemic resolved itself.
Who are these musicians that you perform with on these?
The drummer is Jim Faulkner, who's a drummer.
Didn't he play with you before?
Yeah, he was in the Happy Accents with me, and also the Winonas.
Right.
And the bass player who I was just talking about, the guy that came up with the name is Brandon Malik. Very talented musician, singer, writer in his own right. And the other guitar player is Kristen Von Bernthal, who is also an immensely talented individual.
What was the last name of it?
Kristen Von Bernthal. Kristen Von B, as people know her as that.
Is that a stage name or a real name?
That's her real name. And they're all, the big thing about this band is that I wanted to have a lot of harmonies. And Brandon and Kristen, who are great musicians, are also great natural singers. And you don't really have to hold their hand about harmonies and stuff like that. And so that's one of the angles. That was another reason why I kind of took a long time to find musicians once I started to want to, quote, lead sing again, is I didn't want it to be too punk rocky and just get up there and yell my brains out like I used to do, which probably I was doing when you and I met. You know,
some of it.
Yeah.
But it was fresh then, and it was kind of happening.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I
hope
did a lot of screaming too.
Oh, right. Yeah, you did.
Sometimes it was even in key. Not too much.
Sometimes it was at me.
Yeah. Now, how did you meet these guys?
Just through playing in bands. Of course, Jim I've known since late 80s, I'm sure. And then Brandon, the bass player, Jim and I met him, and that's when we started the Winonas in whatever, 2000 is what I'm saying. It might have been 2001 or something. And Kristen, I did not know. I knew of her, and I had seen her play in bands.
And what does she play?
She plays guitar.
So is she the one that plays lead, or do you both play? I mean,
we
solo?
switch off.
Okay.
But yeah, she can do lead, and I can do lead. So it's not like. Yeah, it's not like one person does it.
Yeah, because I wasn't positively sure, if, at least on the recording. I mean, it sounded like real drums, so I figured it was a drummer and all that, the bass player. But I thought maybe it's just one guitar.
Yeah, she. What you're hearing on the recordings might not necessarily be what we're doing as a live band. A lot of the recordings, maybe,
well, of course,
yeah, some of them might not be on. Jim, the drummer, plays on almost all of, like in the Solids and Coyote, he plays on almost all the songs. But the other ones, it's just a mixing and matching.
Oh, okay.
And those guys can play every instrument.
Right.
Branding.
So they're basically the other ones mostly just your live band and all that. They weren't necessarily in the studio.
Interesting, because when we started to play these songs live, we had to realize that it's not going to sound like the record.
Of course.
And what's going to happen, and people have already said this, is when they see us play live, it's way more. It's way louder, and it's way more rockin'. I don't know how else to put it. It's way more high energy is probably the better way to put it, you know.
Why, you're not nervous?
No.
A lot of times that's what makes it louder and more intense, is if you're,
well, of course, there's energy and adrenaline.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't mean
right.
nervous energy.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, but even when there's been some times where we've had to rearrange songs as we're playing them, because there's no way we could replicate, you know how it is. I mean, when you're in the quote studio, you can do so many more things that you can't do live.
Right.
But fortunately for us, there's a lot of flexibility, because everybody, or at least two of the members, can sing harmonies. And one thing I like about playing with these musicians is they can see the big picture. They're not just so zoned in on whatever it is they're doing. And I think that's what good bands have to do, is that they have to have respect for the entire package, or the entire product, I guess.
Sure.
And they got to listen to the other people and not just themselves. And so, because these people have been playing in bands for a long time, they grasp that. You know, that's something that not everybody learns that. And the other thing is they have a lot of respect for just the song. You know, I put a lot of work into writing songs, and I think that they know how to play a good song live. You know.
Now, that was the other thing I was going to ask you, because the Spotify and all that, I think they'll say this. Are these songs on these two albums that are on Spotify? Are all the songs written by you?
Yeah.
Music and lyrics?
Yes. Yeah. Yep, I made them up. Jimmy, made them up out of my own mind.
Well, which is cool, but I remember there was a post on your Facebook page where it's, you know, with the happy accidents, somebody found a copy of your CD at a garage sale, and it mentioned that Paul EinHaus lyrics. That band,
I saw that. That was well, that was just how we credited. I guess that was just how we came upon crediting those songs back then.
So even back then, you were writing music. I mean, all the music and that.
And the happy accents. I don't think that the other members will be mad at me for saying I wrote those songs, even though there might have been sort of a spirit of when I brought a song to the band that we'd all collaborate on how it would end up. You know.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know. I mean, some things maybe they're songwriting or maybe they're not. But you know how it is when you bring a song into the band. You might realize as you play through it live that, we got to have two choruses at the end, or we don't need all of these bridges or whatever thing that's going on. So I mean, is that arranging or is that songwriting? And so I mean, this is a long time ago, but
that's entrusting the other musicians to see your vision and build on it a little bit.
Good, yeah, I agree. That is right, yeah.
But first they got to see your vision, and understand where you're coming from.
Right.
In other words, the chemistry and where they play themselves with.
Yeah, well, because you don't. Yeah, but then you wouldn't be in bands with those people who didn't understand that anyway. I mean, the band you're talking about, the Happy Accidents. At least by then, all of the guys in the band knew of each other and knew what music we were into, and so it wasn't like a culture shock of. I wouldn't bring in a song and they wouldn't go, "What is this crazy ass motherfucking banjo reggae music?" or something like that. They would never. I mean, there would have been no surprises.
Right.
You know.
They would understand your writing style.
Yeah. But that is interesting. Different bands have different. I really don't know what it's like because I'm not in different bands. I'm only in the one band now. But yeah, when I've been in. Like in the last 10 or 15 years when I was doing more of being a sideman, lead guitar player, occasional backing vocals dude, that role is way different than if you're the writer.
Oh, big time.
You know, I love arranging songs too, and that is a whole different, you would think that's a whole different, you're using a different muscle than writing a song when you're arranging it.
Sure.
Different
side of your brain.
Yeah. And then, when you're playing live, you have to understand that whatever tricks you use when you're recording it might not apply on the stage. And so that is the one thing about the members of this band I'm in right now, where there's a lot of work that does not need to be done. There's a lot of hand-holding that does not need to be done because they just instinctively know that, Either they instinctively knew it or they just learned it over the years.
Yeah. Now, when you say, you had mentioned earlier and stuff that people have said it's a bit more, did you say aggressive live and all that or whatever?
I might have said rockin'.
Rockin'. Now, is that also as far as the tonality?
Yeah,
In other words, you guys, is somebody all of a sudden kicking in a distortion pedal? Because I don't really hear much of that in that.
No, the records are pretty clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't use distortion on anything except like non-guitar. Live. I mean, that's recording. Live, as far as the guitar playing, Kristen favors a more distorted style than I do, and we talk about that a lot. And I play a very clean style. I play Telecaster through a clean Fender amp.
Haven't you more or less always used a Telecaster?
I've always used a Telecaster, but back in the days when you knew me, there was a while where I played with a lot of distortion.
Yeah, well, everybody did, especially playing that kind of music.
Yeah, in the 90s, I had two distortions right next to each other, and then I went back to playing clean, and then I never looked back. To me, it's just more organized that way. But I love the duality of clean against the distorted.
What, you mentioned a Telecaster. What else? What are you playing the Telecaster through? What kind of gear do you use?
Well, these days when I'm playing live, I play through a Fender Bassman, which I'm sure is what I was playing back when I knew you before. It's an old 410 clean.
Now, is that because you really like that sound, or just haven't made enough money to buy anything new?
No. Well, that was expensive at the time. I remember I bought that amp in 91 or 92. I had to take out a loan to get that amp. It was $700 new.
That would have been
91 or 92. Yeah, and I did not have that money laying around, so I had to go to my credit union and get a loan to buy a freaking amp.
Well, Sharon said you were giving blood. Paul's not going to be in today. He's giving the blood. He needs to buy this amp.
I got to get some equipment. Yeah. I love that. I love that thing. But what I was going to say is, before I knew you for about a year and a half, I was trying to start a band with this woman who was the closest thing to a mentor that I ever had in music. And this woman, her name was Pam Meisel. And I haven't talked to her in a long time. I hope she's doing well. But she was maybe like 7 or 8 years older than me. And she'd already been in bands. And the first rehearsal that we ever had, she had a blue Telecaster through a little Fender amp. And I didn't have anything like that at the time. And I remember she strummed a chord, and that's the sound I want. What you're doing right there. And she said, I'm just strumming a Telecaster through a little Fender amp. I said, that's exactly what I want.
That's the tone you were
Yeah. And she was a way more schooled guitar player than I was. She was one of these annoying people that could play every instrument. And yeah. Oh, I can't stand them. And then, but she could play, the fake book and the real book?
Right.
What's it called? Is it the fake book or the real book? Or is it both? Okay, yeah. So she would be able to, she knew how to sight read, and she could play, like jazz standards like Autumn Leaves, and my favorite things like that.
Yeah.
She wasn't a shredder on guitar, certainly, but
not playing that stuff anyway.
Well, but she could negotiate it just by looking at it.
Right.
And that was a completely new world to me.
In other words, she could read music. She wasn't reading charts. She was reading
She
music.
could sight read,
Right.
and she was, I was like, say, 20 or 21, and I was very young, and I'd never seen anything like this before. And I can just remember the tones that she would get just from that, just going straight through this little Fender amp. I remember watching her fingers and hearing the way that she would bend strings. I still play riffs that she didn't sit down and teach me. I just got from looking at her and absorbing her. And we had a couple like 4-track recordings. The band never took off because we were never be able to find a drummer and a bass player.
And you were too young to play in a bar probably at that time, weren't you?
I was just getting to be that age,
Okay.
you know, and I really was hoping it would work out, but I was also impatient because I wanted to play in a band now, on stage, now. I want to go to the Hamtramck pub and get on that stage now. And she was very, she was way more of a patient person than I am. She was, yeah, I loved the time I spent with her because I learned a lot from her. And very often, it's kind of funny. I don't know if you ever do this, but I'll be playing a solo or I'll be doing something and I go, I'm just ripping off Pam, basically. I'm just doing exactly what I learned from her. I'm not doing anything that I have. This is the same thing I've been doing since 1985 or whatever year this was.
Pam, if you're listening, you just take that as a
Right.
compliment that he's still ripping you off.
Well, you know, I think I told her, I haven't talked to her maybe any more than once in the last 10 years, but I said, just so you know.
Right.
Yeah, there's nothing original about my guitar playing at all. And I love playing guitar. I mean, I love writing songs, but I love playing the guitar. And she was the one. Like when I heard her play, and she had a great rock and roll sense too. I was mentioning that she could play jazz.
Right.
But that was not really her thing. She knew how to do that, and that was in her back pocket. But she was a rocker. I mean, she loved garage rock like I was into. That Nuggets kind of hard driving stuff that I know you like also.
Was she in bands?
She was in bands before.
Anything we
I don't know. I don't remember what she was in. I know that she was playing professional kinds of like Holiday Inns, playing covers. But also she had tried to start original bands. I wish I could tell you, Jimmy, but I just don't know.
Right.
I just don't remember.
In other words, she was making money at it.
She at one point had to have been because
Playing Holiday Inns in those days.
yeah, but I think also it was one of those soul zapping gigs.
Oh, all those gigs are soul zapping. As you're
Does that still happen? Is there still a culture of people playing covers and
absolutely
and Holiday Inns and stuff like that?
Sure.
There's a kind of romance in that though too, though, right?
I did that. Why are you laughing?
I'm not laughing. I'm looking at you in admiration. Did you really?
Oh, for years.
Oh, I did not know that.
And still didn't make any money.
Right. Well, but if I'm not mistaken, you could at one point carve out a living doing that, and even here in Detroit.
Big time. When there used to be a ton of clubs.
Right.
And there used to be a ton of clubs. Well,
right.
A ton of them.
No, I know that, but I'm talking about specifically Holiday Inns.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember like that was
Holiday Inns or other kind of
Yeah. I'm picturing the place that we were just talking about the part Reuben Kincaid.
Yes.
Just picturing the place that they would play.
Yeah.
The generic. The generic place where and they would know exactly when the song was fading out and then bow.
I played in bands where we all had costumes like that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly what she was doing, but I remember what we were trying to do was the complete antichrist of whatever that is at that time, if I remember.
You wanted to be original artist.
Right.
You wanted to starve.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Right. And this is the one more thing about Pam, and I hope if she ever hears this episode that she doesn't judge me too harshly, but this tells you what a jerk I can kind of be. She started to play the fiddle, and she got into Irish music, and I said, why would you want to do that? Oh no. And she wanted, and then she started taking me to Irish music circles because she wanted to be into that scene, into that crowd. And
are you talking about like Irish folk music?
Yes, and it was completely lost on me, and And I was like, why would you want to do that? And she got this fiddle, and she sounded awful. And she would practice this thing. I don't know what job she had where she could just practice the fiddle all day, or if she was even working. But I'd come over to her house. I spent a lot of time with her back in those days. And she kept getting better and better. And then after our association ended, she became a very well-known fiddle player.
Really?
In the Ann Arbor. You know, people, a couple times I'd encountered people who were in some sort of Irish scene, and I would say, do you know who Pam Eisel is? And they would go, oh my God, yeah, she's only the best.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you, stick with something.
Yeah, she was an uncannily talented musician.
So,
Yeah.
stick with guitar, Paul. You might
I
get
know,
good at it.
right? One of these days, Jimmy.
Well, you got big enough to get an electric guitar, so that's
Yeah. But I mean, we were talking about Telecaster. I believe
Right.
I believe we can trace me playing a Telecaster to that moment when I was at her little house, and
Now,
she
does
just
the
strummed the
Telecaster
chord.
also had, as far as the tonality, is that the tone? Is that the only guitar that you thought, or you felt
I've never
that-
played another electric guitar since. That was well, no, that's not true. I had a Gretsch guitar for maybe a year or two after that.
And
because that's
nothing
what-
else sounded right or felt right?
It never. There have been times where I've said I got to broaden my horizons. I can't keep playing a Telecaster all of my life.
I gotta get a BC Rich.
Exactly. I got to get anything that doesn't sound Telecaster-y. And then I'd go to the music store and I'd pick out a guitar and I'd try to make it sound Telecaster-y. So I was like, I might as well just get another
Is that a word,
Telecaster.
Telecaster-y?
Yeah, it is. If I say it is, then it is.
Okay, I agree with that then. I'm not going to argue with it. Mention some of your influences. I mean, we talked a little earlier, obviously, before this interview, about who I thought some of the stuff reminded of. And you mentioned some people. And you mentioned Bob Dylan. And I can see that as far as like the folky aspect and all that.
Right.
I have to say you're a much better singer than Bob Dylan. I've never really been a big Dylan fan as far as his vocals. Brilliant writer. Other than that, I think you got a better voice. Definitely more original. But I know that that was a different time, a different scene. Other than Dylan, who else would you say influenced you?
I really don't even know if Dylan influenced
Oh.
me. I mean, I love him, but it's really hard to say. I don't know if I'm being a little bit protective about the word influence, because it's just so hard for me to. It's been years. I don't know if I ever wrote a song and said, I want this to be a cross between this particular
No, I
influence
don't
and
mean that.
influence.
I mean as far as like you grew up listening to and
Yeah,
stuff.
well, Dylan is a biggie. I didn't start listening to him until college.
I was gonna say you're young. You're younger than me. So did you have an older brother? I don't know,
Yeah,
family
I have a
members
big
that-
family, and
that
so
were playing that stuff. And you
yeah,
kind of
well, not
first
Dylan. Dylan, I had to seek that out on my own. I don't remember them playing that stuff, but the stuff my older brothers and sisters would listen to would be, just the hits of this, what you would hear on AM radio in the 70s.
The Osmonds, Donnie Marie, the Partridge Family.
Partridge Family. Well, of course, my favorite, the band I listened to a lot that I still listen to from when I was a kid is Steely Dan.
Love Steely Dan.
Yeah, I think I remembered that you did.
I love them.
I would sound nothing. Of course, I sound nothing like them. But what I like about them is there's a lot of ambiguity in their lyrics,
Yes.
and I think that's why it holds up so well now. Kids are loving Steely Dan now
I
for
know it's-
years.
It's coming. It's
Yeah.
all coming back.
Right.
I remember one of your favorite lines. Do you remember what your favorite line is?
Is there gas in the car? Yes, there's gas in the car.
That's. I always say that to people. Like, just out of the blue, they'll say, "How you doing?" I don't know. Is there gas in the car?
Gas in the car. Yes, there's gas in the car. That's like the most curly from the Three Stooges influence moment in rock and roll.
That was.
What are they thinking when they're doing that? Is there gas in the car?
Well, you have to put it in context. Anybody listening to this that doesn't know Steely Dan music probably wouldn't know what they're referencing. You'd have to listen to the song and know what the song is about in reference to that.
Right.
And I don't totally
Right.
remember it, but I think it had to do with gangster-y kind of stuff or gang
It is.
thing.
Well, who really knows? But I think that particular song, Kid Charlemagne, there's some
Yes.
drug shit going on.
Yeah. Well,
They're cleaning up a drug scene. in
Right,
there.
right,
Yeah,
right.
and I love that about
Right.
them is that it really seems like they're doing a really deep dive, very intense intense description of a scene just gone horribly wrong, you know? That's what I like about it, because then very rarely, I really don't know where they came from musically, because you can't really say that. It seems like that's one of the few 70s bands that has absolutely no Beatles reference at all.
Yes.
You know, anybody else that came up from the 70s, that you could sometimes point to, well, that's kind of a Beatle-y thing. But Steely Dan was like, fuck that. I don't know what their feeling was on it, but even when I was
they were all session players.
Yeah, right. But even as a kid, when I was very young when I first heard Willin' in the Years and Do It Again, there's just something about that. As a kid, it was attractive to you, even though you did not know the sinister goings on.
Right.
Not all of their songs were sinister.
No.
Certainly. But, I can remember listening to Ricky Don't Lose That Number and thinking...
And Black Friday. And
right, yeah. And it was just a completely vivid world to me, even though I had no idea. It was one of those things where I was thinking, one day I'll understand the sophistication of this music. I don't know now, you know, as a kid, you know, like eating Fruit Loops in front of the TV watching Bugs Bunny.
Who did? You know?
Well,
you just knew you liked it.
And I think that in all fine film and all fine literature that there has to be some sort of built-in ambiguity. And I don't think that you should ask anything of songwriters to tell you the truth. Like, that is not their job. They're not news correspondents. You know, I think that what they should do is present... First of all, the number one thing is to be entertaining. I don't care. That's the number one thing. I mean, if you're making something that's artistic, that's great, and I'm happy for you. But the number one thing to do, I think, to a listener is to make sure that they're being entertained.
Right.
You know, I mean, entertaining could be many things. It could be you're shaking your booty, or it could be you're entertained mentally or emotionally, right?
Right.
I mean, it's good it's good if you can do all of those at the same time. I love it when people are dancing and moving around. I think that's important too, you know. I think, you know, when people go out to see live music, they really want to experience something that's physical and they can move around. But not everybody. I mean, there are places where people just want to sit there and, you know, like look up at a singer-songwriter.
And not even that. Some places they just want it in the background.
Yeah, I know. That's I understand that. That's not. I guess that you could say that's one of the uses of music, you know, but that's not.
Quiet down. We're having a serious
conversation. Yeah. See, that would drive me crazy.
Well, you haven't played some big exec.
No, I've been. Look, man. I know what that's. I hate it when people are talking. And you know, even the greatest of performers going to be people. I'm sure I've talked as people were playing.
But I mean,
you know?
To me, that always bothered me too, because when I go see an entertainer or a band or whatever, I want to see the band. You know,
right.
I want to give them the respect that I would want, and never got.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't know.
But a lot of people don't look at it that way, even at a national level.
But that's the beauty of music, is you can use it any way you want.
Yes.
You know, you don't have to. No one should force you to just say that music only has one particular utility. You can do anything.
That's true, because it is personal.
Right. And there are many times where I put something on and I'm not listening to it. You know, when I was in school, I would put on music to not listen to, but I just wanted something in the back.
These albums, they sound very personal as far as a lot of the songs. Are these songs based on life experiences?
I just make shit up. I swear to God. I'm so happy. First of all, I'm so happy that you're engaged enough to even listen and even think and to even have a thought about it. And I know from talking to you earlier that you've been listening to the last two records, and I'm so happy. And just in the last recent times, I don't know, I think it's since like the beginning of the year when I put out that single Othello, and I played some solo shows. People have been a little bit more interested in what you just asked. For many years, I don't think people even gave a shit. No, there's nothing. I think the trick is to make people think that it is personal. And sometimes, though, I gotta say, though, sometimes I'll be playing a song years later, and then I go, oh, you know what? I think maybe that did address some shit that was going on. I mean, we've all been through some shit in these last couple of years. You have, and I certainly have. So, but you know, I made a conscious decision, and I don't know when this moment was, but this was in the 90s. And this was the last time I ever had writer's block. So this was when I was in the Happy Accident. So this was like 94 or 95. And those guys, bless their hearts, loved new songs. And so I had to keep feeding the beast.
Right.
And one day, nothing. I couldn't write. It occurred to me that I should just make it. If nothing bad, because nothing bad happens to you every day.
Right.
Nothing good happens to you, but some days are just days.
Yeah.
You know, most days are just days.
Right.
You know, you don't get a flat.
At the time clock. You know.
Right. And if I didn't have a flat tire that day or have something to bitch about, then I just said. And I always liked making stuff up anyway. Since I was a kid, I liked just writing and making stuff, pulling just stuff out of my ass. And once I came to that realization, it was just the gates just opened up. I have just been making shit up since then. Most of the songs I write, they don't even get recorded or no one's ever going to hear them. I like to write just to write. It is kind of a tricky thing because I don't need to write every day, and I definitely would never discipline myself to write every day. I know there are people, and I know some friends of mine that are songwriters, I think they try to write every day. And if that works for them, that's good. Mm-hmm. What I do is I know what's going to happen is I'll write a song and then I'll write a bunch after that in a couple. In fact, that's what happened with Solids and Coyote, that whatever year that was when I wrote all these songs, I just wrote a bunch, not at once, but over like a couple of months. And the first couple I knew were going to suck. And then the last couple I knew were going to suck. But I knew the ones in the middle, when you start to get more relaxed, or I don't even know what it is. It's almost like there's this room with endless amount of songs, and there's like a window or a door into it. And most of the time it's closed. But then when it opens up, like you take as many as you can. And you rob it as much.
Take it away.
And then you write as much. And then after that, you do all of the editing and all of the busy work to it. I like doing that too, but I've been writing a lot recently. I love just writing. It was just one of those things where I was so happy as a kid that I figured out how to do it. And of course, I'll never make a cent doing it. Occasionally I'll make enough money off of Bandcamp where I can pay my electric bill. But that's actually really good. That's a good quarter right there.
Yes.
And Bandcamp, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but Bandcamp is the best. But anyway, what you're saying is, are these songs personal? I think really when you're writing, you're just you're just an actor. And what you're trying to do is, first of all, you're trying to entertain. And so maybe you're just trying to create a little world that will bring the listener in somehow. And you and I have all heard songs that when we first heard them, that didn't mean anything to us. And then one day it hits you. The problem is these days is that people, I think, a little bit more impatient with music than
short attention
than our generation.
Right.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is.
Yes.
And there's so much competition. There's so much content out there, as I'm sure you're finding out now with this.
Yes.
And to hear someone like yourself, or maybe a couple of people I've encountered in the last year or so, where they've really sat down and listened to it, it just fills my heart with joy, because I was like, I didn't know that those people existed. And I've talked to younger people too.
You had nobody ever ask you these?
It's been years, because I stopped lead singing for such a long time.
No, I'm talking about your songs as far as the lyrical content.
Not that much. That was never really that much of a conversation.
Maybe it's because I'm also a musician and write songs. Because to me, it was like I always wished I could. Write from story type songs like Springsteen, Billy Joel, where it was like, Cougar Mellencamp. But I could never do that. I could never get down and experience and write to where it would be lyrically cohesive, have any rhyme, So I'd end up making shit up about wizards and fucking dancing.
That's good,
on
though.
The rough.
Yeah.
Your stuff. What I mean by personal is it's relatable, whether you want to think it is or not.
I'm glad you say that, because I think that's great. I mean, that's a huge compliment.
You have to be. I think you have to be a listener to really appreciate any kind of music. You have to take the time to do that. And this leads me into my next question. Like I say, personal and stuff, because some of the lyrics and some of these songs and stuff. One of the songs that's on here called "Victims," about people came to town. There's trash on the sacred ground. And at first, I didn't quite understand the third lyric where you say the bones or dry bones walking around.
That's amazing that you can remember all of that.
As a reference to the actual Indians. At first I was thinking, are you talking about the mindless zombies that are at the carnival, or were you referring to the actual Indian, like ghosts?
All of the above. But let me just say this. It's kind of funny you mentioned that, because we were just talking about that song. I was talking that song with someone else just recently. I would never say that a song is about any one thing. I always would say that the listener should decide for themselves.
Sure.
And then I'll agree with the listener.
Sure.
But I also will say dry bones is biblical. That's from the Bible. That's Old Testament shit. And I don't know exactly the context of what it was, but the dry bones got up and started walking around. Now, I don't know it. I like to impress you with my knowledge of the Bible, but that's not how I know it. I know it because there's there's an old folk song that I love I think it's called Dry Bones. And in the song, there's just an image that I love where he says, dry bones got up and walked around. The deaf could hear and the blind could see. I'm not remembering the words exactly right. Somebody out there's a million voices right now listening to this saying, he's got the words wrong to this ancient folk song. But anyway, that's what I was thinking about, was that folk song called Dry Bones.
And the reason I brought that up is because of what I was interpreting. And there again, I know you like that, and a good artist should like that. Let the audience interpret it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I know in the Bible, I've actually, many years ago, I started to read these particular passages from the Bible, and I did not know to interpret it as if it was a good thing or a bad thing that the dry bones were walking around.
Right.
Because you could look at it either way. And
Sure.
I'm not exactly remembering the context of the Bible. Somebody out there, like I said, they would know better. But it doesn't even matter.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter how I interpreted it. It just sounds good.
Yes.
Really, it just sounds good in the song.
It does, but
don't hold me to anything.
No, I understand that, but you can call the song Victims.
Right.
So that's why I was trying to tie it in as far as the American Indian in this country were they were major victims.
Yes.
We took their land. We freaking had a carnival on it. And was that not the message you were trying to say in that?
I'm not going to say, because anything I can say will only make you lessen the drama of that particular song to you. I am so glad, though, that you brought it out, because we play that song live, and it doesn't sound too much like the recording. The recording is just acoustic guitar and a couple voices. But live, man, those guys play their butts off when we play that song. It is more of a hard driving, it's the same tempo, but we had to rearrange it for the stage, and that's why I love playing with them, because they completely understood all of the, I'm sounding very precious here, I understand this, but they understood, all of the parts of a song that needed to be stressed and accessed.
Sure.
And they completely got it. That's probably one of the most fun things I've ever had, was rearranging that song, Victims, because it's just acoustic. I was going to have other musicians play on it. That's just me on the record.
Right.
But I time ran out. Like, I had a deadline. It was just in my head. Nobody was holding it.
Well, let's see here. This is more of my music intuitiveness, or attempt to it. You mentioned the dry bones, because that's what sticks out with me in that song, of the dry bones.
Yeah.
Like I said, is he talking about the people walking around, the ghosts of the Indians walking around? And now you tell me it's a Bible reference. And so it gets me thinking even deeper and stuff. And then you're playing just acoustic on it. Yeah. Bare bones.
Right. That's true. Right. Yeah.
That's all you're playing. Because someone else could have taken that song and totally said, Paul, I'm going to cover your song, and done it, and exploited the whole idea of what they thought you were talking about with tribal drums.
Sure. Right.
Hey, and I don't mean that as an insult against the Indians, Native Americans, but I'm just saying, you can see, because in today's society, it seems like almost everything's acceptable, yet it's not. You know what I'm saying? You can get away with just about anything because you can claim freedom of speech, but on the other hand, they want you to be PC at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know about any of that stuff. Yeah.
Well, you're mad enough to admit it. Yeah. And I don't know if I do either. I might just be, being, off the cuff. But no, that song definitely spoke to me. One of the other ones that spoke to me, because, like I told you before, I think these albums are very eclectic. I hope I'm using that word right. Eclectic in the sense, to me, there's just so many different facets. Like I was saying, that one song, it sounds like it's this. Right. And all of a sudden you take a right turn. Right. And one of the other songs that really stood out to me and stuff, and I didn't have time today to look the word up that you used and stuff, and I'm like, oh, man, that's not important, Paul. Was the Lank-haired sister.
Lank-haired sisters.
Yes. It sounds to me like a lullaby.
Yeah.
Is it a lullaby?
If you say it is, then it is.
I mean, do you not sense that in the song, the way you sing it? I don't mean that you meant to write it as a lullaby, but
it can be used as a lullaby without a doubt. That was a hard song for me to sing. Not hard physically to sing, but it was. There's a lot going on in there that I don't think that I knew when I was writing. I write like it's. I don't even think about what I'm writing when I'm writing. But then when I was recording that, some shit had gone down in my life that song. And then there's another song on that same album called Night Ride to the Coast. And those songs I was finishing and mixing at the same time. I always associated those two songs together. I don't know, there probably is some deeper thing going on in there that I would just be reluctant to say what it might be. I don't think that you would think that as a songwriter that you would have some insight, but I don't. Number one, I don't. And the other thing is, like I said before, anything I would tell you would only make it worse, you know? Like I can't, songs are
you
not...
You want to leave it up to the listener.
Yeah, songs
Sure.
are not like articles that you read in the newspaper or on a blog or something like that where
Well, some songs are by certain artists. You gotta know that.
right. And then but it drives me crazy if I go to open mic night or if I see a singer-songwriter play and then they explain the song they're getting ready to play. Now I understand some people do like that.
Right.
But that drives me up the fucking wall. Just play the damn song and I will decide
Yes.
for myself.
Yes.
Now sometimes it's good to have context though too.
Right.
You know, if someone says, "Oh, I wrote this song when something was going on and I
Right.
was in this particular town and I was in a house that had these particular things around me or something." I don't
Right,
even
right.
know. I mean,
No,
it's good to have the atmosphere and context, but, you know, there's a great quote David Bowie once said. In fact, I think I said it before. Someone was asking him about, I don't know what it was. This is when Let's Dance came out. It was an old interview, and they were asking him about, it's a great song on there called Gets Me to the Church on Time.
Yeah.
Church on Time. And
Yeah,
someone was
yeah.
asking him about that song.
Right.
Because the imagery in that song is genius. That's a
Yes.
great song. That
Yes.
is just a great motherfucking song. I don't
Yes.
care. And someone asked him, you know, what is that about? David Bowie, one of the great writers of our time.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, you gotta tell me.
Exactly.
It's not my job, man. I got enough on my plate.
Well,
you know?
you got to understand, as an interviewer, you want to try and get inside the mind of an artist a little bit to see. I mean, that's Paul, that's my job.
Yeah, well, Link-Haired Sisters, I think there's something about the melody that is very naive and very childlike about it.
Absolutely.
And
that's why I say
yeah,
lullaby.
right. And so, and there's a lot of almost like fairy tale instrumentation in that particular
Yes.
song, and weird echoey guitars.
Very cool.
right.
All of it. Oh.
And I think Jim the drummer also was very fond of that song, and what he plays on that is just amazing. I don't know if it would be a lullaby or anything like that.
Right.
It was, my intentions were not that specific.
Sure.
You know, I am, look, believe me, I am just happy that people are talking about music and that someone's asking me about music. So I don't mean to sound like...
No, I know you don't. I know you don't and stuff, but it just interests me as a music lover, first of all.
Yeah, because I say close your eyes.
Exactly. But I'm just saying in general about your songs. That's what intrigues me about it. You know, to me, it's like, if you're going to sit here and tell me, I just make stuff up. Well, okay, that's fine, but most of the time most people make stuff up based a little bit on something. Maybe not their experience.
Of course, yeah, because you write
maybe
what
an
you know.
experience they read about,
Right.
or an event that happened to the world, something like that. And if you're going to tell me that all these songs, you just woke up one day and just started going, all right, today I'm going to write a song called Othello. That just blows me away. I'm not saying that's not true, because if you're going to tell me it's the case, who am I to say it isn't? But that blows me away. To me, that's incredible.
Well, Jimmy, let me just say this.
That's incredible.
You are what you eat.
Yes.
So, of course, everything that you come in contact with, whether it's a record that you've listened to or a film or a TV show that you watched, it's going to influence you in some way.
Course.
And you might not know it consciously what it's going to do. And that is what songwriting also is.
Yeah.
It's just... I would never begrudge anybody who says that they want to write this particular kind of song in the mood of whatever artist, you know, Billy Joel and Springsteen or whatever like that. If it's good, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
All that matters is it's good, and you're entertaining me. And the thing about entertaining is that it's almost like you want to leave. You know, all the great songs that you and I have ever heard. It's almost like you leave your body when you hear them.
Yeah.
You know. And you just, and also the great performers, when you watch them play, it's almost like, I don't mean to get too mystical here because I don't have a mystical bone in my body, but I do think that there's something that's going on that can't be named, that we don't know exactly what it is, and that the scientists really won't be able to tell us, and that's what separates us from different animals.
Sure.
And I think that's what's happening is when you hear, hopefully great music is being made in the world still today. But even when you're listening to whatever music that you like, I know you're an incredibly open-minded individual though, because when I met you, you were and still are a metalhead,
Well, hard rock.
Hard rock.
I got in the metal, of course, too, because I wanted to wear spandex. And I had stock at Aquanet.
Who can blame you?
Exactly. Yeah. And you gravitate toward it because, it was taken away. At least in my growing up. I may not have been with your family. Mm-hmm. My parents encouraged me to play music, but it was classical music.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
We want you to play classical music on the piano, which, of course, helped me down the line in theory and reading the right songs.
Can you sight read?
Yeah, of course.
You were a trumpet player.
Yes.
Because I remember you were super into Maynard Ferguson.
Big time. Still am.
Yeah. Are you?
Mm-hmm. He's dead now.
Salt peanuts. He did Salt Peanuts, didn't he?
Yes. Now, where
he did a lot of stuff, though, I'm sure.
His big thing was the Rocky thing, remember? Go to Fly Now.
Maynard Ferguson?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, Ray Chataway. He did the Rocky thing. That was the only hit record he ever had.
Good for him, though. Yeah.
But, so anyway, I just kind of, like I said, I wanted to touch on those songs because there was something to me personal. Not that I related to them. I'm not, like I said, though, in victims. I'm not Indian, although my wife did do a DNA, and I like 1/13%. I don't Cherokee or some kind of stuff.
Right.
And 99.9% French.
Sure.
Right. So whatever that
Prince
matters.
Edward Island.
Yeah. But I've always been, because the same thing. We carry our influences on our sleeves. You can't help it. You want to try and be as original as possible.
Agreed.
But you can't help it.
You don't even understand what we're doing. I mean, you don't know that you're in being what.
Yeah, you don't mean to be until later someone says to you, oh, that's a cool song. But, in my case, it was like, yeah, that's a cool song, but Dokken did it 3 years ago. Thank you for being on Motor City Rock Talk with me, Paul.
Yeah, Jimmy, thanks for having me.
You're always welcome to come back. I look forward to the show and stuff. And I've got friends I've been talking about it and stuff. Like I said, when I talked to my buddy earlier today about the happy accident and stuff, I go, you got to come to this show. It's a Saturday night, so it's like, which is cool because I don't work Sunday at Amazon. So anyway, as I always say, keep rocking.